All right, here we go. So thanks everyone for joining in this session. So today, as you know, we're going to go over CV review and targeting. And I guess a pre-session kickoff that we're going to do is next slide. All right, this is the format for today. So first off, we're going to cover effective writing and SEO. Next off is specific role and industry targeting. We've got a few sample CVs for you as well that we'd like for you to sort of see. And the last bit is final Q&A. I guess there are a few questions that we're going to cover off as well, which is whatever you guys have sent through, and we try our best to answer those, as well as any additional questions that come through this session today.
Yeah, don't forget to pop your questions into the Q&A box.
Yes. All right. So to kick off, if you could please go to menti.com on your mobile device or your laptops and put in this code. You'll see this question on the screen that says, what do you think is the most important part of a CV? You can just type in your answers and hit enter or send, and we'll start seeing this screen pop up with all those answers very, very soon. We'll give ourselves 2 minutes to do this. So get cracking, guys. Any responses?
Achievements, yes,
Good.
that's important.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. I guess that means like professional history or background.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great.
Keep them coming.
Nice. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Skills, that's come up twice now.
Yeah.
Summary, yes. Results, work experience, yeah.
Yep. Contact details, yes, very important.
Location as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Clarity, yes. Anything else? Personal statement, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I would also say roles and responsibility, your current responsibility, that would also be quite important and useful to know.
Yeah. Okay, looks good. Looks like skills got a lot of words, because anything that you see in, I guess, bigger font, center of the screen is what a lot of people would have typed in. So it looks like skills is something that everyone's typed in, which is obvious. Anything else, guys?
Sorry, I'm just going to add KJ, our third panelist. Hi, KJ. You're on mute. Unmute, yeah.
Hey, KJ.
Hey, hello.
Cool.
Sorry.
So we're just on the pre-session Menti meetup.
Yeah, I can see some loads of different answers there. I'm seeing those coming through.
Cool. So are we done with Menti? Anyone else?
All right. Great. So next up is effective writing and SEO. So I guess, the first thing, if anyone's wondering what is SEO, we know it's search engine optimization. If you were to Google search, that's what it says. In very simple terms, it is a way to increase traffic to your website. Here, we're obviously talking about your resume, your CV. So we're going to see what are the ways by which you can make your CV stand out. So I guess a few things to remember. First off is relevant keywords. So let's just say, if you're looking for a role as a data analyst or a data engineer, make sure that the word data does pop up on your CV a few times. This is also helpful, especially when you're sending in your application to a company where they probably get a lot of applications, high volumes. So they might be using a system by which they, pick out keywords. So this way your CV would stand out. Next up is, obviously integrate the words in sentences. So when you're saying data, talk about your experience around that. Whatever you want to put in, just obviously, put it into proper sentences there. Talk about your roles and accomplishments. We see that you guys know that that's probably important on your CV based on the Mentimeter results, but obviously, highlight the role and accomplishments and, whatever you've done in the past that you're obviously proud of. One of the things that we'd say is avoid, I guess, the general sort of language like team player, motivated. Use synonyms for these words versus just using them as is. And just to sort of, I guess, summarize, it's to sort of review the keywords, maybe put out your CV on your LinkedIn or, online, because that way your CV would obviously get more traffic. There would be more eyeballs looking at it because it's readily available online. And remember to put in your achievements, because a CV that kind of talks about your achievements in your last role kind of stands out versus a CV that just talks about your role in a lot of detail. I guess, the reason why all these things is important is because, stats suggest that any hiring manager looks at a CV for about 6 to 7 seconds before making a decision whether they want to pursue it or hit next. So I guess, these are a few of the things that will make your CV stand out. Okay. So these are some of the questions that came in. KJ is going to be leading this session. So over to you, KJ.
So this question is, I think this is exactly how the questions come in. So do CV readers care about the number of years that you've worked at a company or solely about the role that you've done? So actually, I think it would be interesting for all of us to give our opinion on this one, because I think, from a comms point of view, it might actually be a slightly different answer from the type of clients that you guys work with and the type of candidates that you're talking to. But certainly from a comms perspective, I would certainly say that it's quite, I think from an in-house point of view, it's quite cyclical. So I think what companies would be looking for is that you'd been in that role for a very, very minimum 1 year to have sort of completed a full cycle of communications, those things that happen year in and year out. But I think, to start really seeing results, like they'd want to see you as being in that job for a minimum of 18 months before you would be able to make an impact, to see results, to be able to sort of change the communication strategy, like I say, have an impact. So yeah, I think that it does matter. I think 18 months is probably a minimum, but if there was sort of a series of 18 months, there'd be a question mark around, well, if I'm going to hire this person, are they going to stay for longer than 18 months? Because really the investment that it takes to hire somebody, the sort of that return on investment would be that person would stay at the business for 3, 4, 5 years. So yeah, I think it creates a question mark for sure. Yes, it is about the job that you've done, and obviously if you've you've been doing a certain job within a certain company, and there's, you know, a global pandemic's come along and meant that you aren't doing that job anymore, then that's completely understandable. But you know, if there's sort of been a history of loyalty within previous companies, I don't think that a short stint more recently would be something to worry about. So I hope that sort of covers off that question from a comms perspective. Like, do you guys have anything to add to that?
I guess if I'm just looking from a tech standpoint, it's a bit of both. So as much as, you know, it's really, really important that, you know, we see the sort of projects that you've been involved in, or what was the sort of core responsibility of your previous role, that is important. But the time spent is equally important, because as KJ said, if there's a series of, you know, 6 months to 1 year sort of shifts, then we're just going to be concerned if you know, stay that long in your new role. So I guess for tech as well, it's both, but the weightage is obviously a bit more on the projects and the role that you've been in.
Yeah.
I think for my case in the digital industry, it depends. But of course, I think as a generic, you know, a general rule, it does matter when someone can stay longer than 18 months. That's just, yeah, it's just proof that, you know, you're committed, you know, you have done, you can stay 18 months. It's not just for the sake of staying, but that you have that commitment to stay and try to make something out of that role. And I think that's also the time, like what KJ said, that gives enough time for you to actually contribute back to the company. So I think, yeah, my answer is quite similar to this girl's, where it is quite important, the number of years at a company. It's not just about, you've worked for 18 months, but it also shows a lot more about who you are as a person, that you're someone, you know, maybe you work in a company that has reputation of, you know, being messy, or it's quite a tough company to be in, but then you stayed for 4 years. You know, it does show that, okay, this person, you know, is tenacious, this person, you know, stuck it through even though times were hard. So it does say a lot more than just the 18 months itself. And then obviously the role itself is also important. You know, what have you accomplished in 18 months, you know, or did you accomplish something? And yeah, so I would say that the years of experience within a company is quite an important thing that we look at when we look at CVs.
Sorry, I just got a question that's come through here. So sometimes we might work for the same client under the same role, but our contracting employers may change year on year. How does that impact? So I don't know if that's coming from an agency point of view. So if you work for different agencies for the same client.
So the official employer is different, but the client is the same.
Yeah.
So let's say if you work for, I assume that's the question.
I think that's the question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I mean, there's always, I mean, of course, you know, there are sometimes if you. Yeah, I think that's fine, because it doesn't affect the job itself is still with the same client, just that the official employer is different if you're under a contract.
Yeah.
I mean, from my answer might be slightly different to that, actually, because I think that essentially the company that are employing you would be the agents that you're working for. And if you were working on 5 different clients with that one agency, and one of them, yes, was consistent throughout, but you know, the agency that you're working for are relying on you to service those other 4 clients. So if you're still moving on a regular basis, the answer that we've just given to the previous question that's on the screen would still apply, I think. So, you know, your employer would still be looking to see consistency. Where that might come into play is like if you were then looking to move in-house with that client, maybe with that particular client, then you'd be able to see the loyalty there and the consistency in the that specific client that you've worked on. But otherwise, I would avoid moving from employer to employer, like we shared before.
Yeah, I guess the only thing that I would add to that is that I do understand that on the IT side of things, your client and your job that you're doing there remains the same. But sometimes it's the clients who run out of their contracts with certain employers and they kind of change your employer. So when that happens, I would just suggest that you please put that on your CV. So let's just say if you were working for DBS as an IT analyst, just continue saying IT analyst at DBS via XYZ. So that way we see that, that consistency is there, and we understand that it's DBS who might have changed their contracts or chosen a separate vendor.
And yeah, especially with the digital and tech startups, sometimes, there are always mergers or they get acquired by another company. So you may come from a startup and then they were acquired by DBS. It's also important to say that, you spend 2 years in the startup and then you move to, or maybe you spend 6 months in the startup and then you move into DBS. It's also important to clarify that it's because through the acquisition that now you are working with DBS, because so it's exactly, it's just one journey that you have been with these two companies. It's because of acquisition. Yeah. So these are things that are important because sometimes especially tech startups, they get acquired, they go through mergers. It can look like your CV can look very choppy because you have 6 months here, 8 months there, but actually it's through acquisitions. That's why, it looks like you've worked in a lot of different companies. So I would say that, yeah, just write that if it's through acquisition or mergers, that's why you are working with, XYZ companies.
Okay, there's another question here which I'm just going to read out. I think we might cover it later on in the session, but so should we include our LinkedIn profile link and other links related to accomplishments like personal Tableau works in our CV? I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with including your LinkedIn profile on there. I mean, as we covered in the session last week, your CV and your LinkedIn profile tell slightly different stories. I think, the CV is sort of more in depth and more formal, where the LinkedIn profile might sort of reveal more about your profile professionally, in terms of like the people that you follow, the type of content that you're creating or that you're sharing. So I think, it just kind of gives an extra sort of view on you, if the person who's looking at your CV would want to do that and want to explore more.
I think other stuff, depending on the industry. So if you're in the creative industry, they usually have their own portfolio, or they have a lot of side projects, which is interesting to look at because it also gives, the employers or companies a glimpse into who you are outside of your professional life. So I would say that, include that if it's relevant to your profession.
Or I would say just make a mention of that on your CV and just say that, it's available on request, or that, there is a portfolio or there's extra project work that, we're happy to share and that, we can share when we interview, or it's available on request.
Okay. I'll keep just reading the questions out as they come up. Okay.
Next.
That's it for the moment. Like I say, I'll just keep asking them as they come.
Should we include our own online businesses as well, even if it's not too successful yet? I would say yes. Again, this is under your side project. If you run your own business, it doesn't matter if it's successful or not, but it does show us that, there's an entrepreneurial side to you, and that you do have, you do try to do different things. So I would say yes. I don't think it matters. I mean, of course, if it's successful, then it's worth mentioning that, it has gone this far, you have achieved this much in your own business. But if it's not successful, I would still say just include it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it's a bit like we mentioned, about sort of showing your LinkedIn profile, it sort of gives a more of a sort of a more color behind, like who are you, what do you enjoy, what you're passionate about. I think if you've got this side hustle, then it would usually tell some kind of story about who you are, and maybe sort of shed a bit more light on why you're applying for that job. Or it might even be that that's the reason why you get chosen for the next stage, because that's sort of, it creates a personal connection with the person that's looking at your CV and what you're doing for your side hustle. So yeah, definitely worth mentioning.
Yeah, I agree.
Same,
anything
100%.
else to add?
No, I agree.
Anything else to add? I think that's a question.
Yeah. It's not a question. It's just somebody who asked us a question earlier. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay, so so role or industry targeting. So essentially, what we mean here is tailoring each and every approach. Tailoring each and every approach and making it unique to your target. So this could be changing your CV for every application, or you might find that you want to change your cover letter, but it might sound quite time consuming, but definitely could be worth it for the right kind of job. So when you are targeting these, it's important to sort of like highlight relevant parts of your experience. We've put a few tips here, but I would definitely sort of recommend linking the job requirements. Often in the job advert, there's a bit about the company, there's a bit about the role, and then there's the requirements at the bottom. If you can look at all those requirements and say, yeah, tick, 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 like make sure that they're in your CV, because it might be something that seemed obvious to you, but you haven't specified in there. So again, sort of going back to SEO, like, are you going to be discovered? If they're going, if someone searching through those 200 applications for someone with XYZ experience, are you going to come up in that search? So research the company and see what kind of people they'd like to employ. So you might want to maybe mention their values, for instance, if you can see that as a business that's important to them. You might want to sort of link the values into your cover letter, or it might sort of inspire you to talk about like a side hustle or a hobby or something specific that links you to that company. And recognizing that not all accomplishments are relevant to the industry or role. So again, I think it's just about sort of a balancing act to ensure that your CV isn't too long either, because I mean, we do encourage people to sort of candidates to keep the CV below 2 pages wherever possible. And that can be a bit of a deal breaker for a lot of recruiters. I think it's less than 20% of hiring managers feel that a CV that's longer than two pages long is a deal breaker. And even if they don't, like, they might not have time to look further than 2 pages, which is the brutal truth. And of course, when you are making those edits, like if you are editing your CV every single time, really make sure that that there aren't any grammatical mistakes or any typos in there. So just read and reread each time you do send that. Make sure you put the right kind of company names in there, the right job title that you're applying for. I've got another stat here, which is an estimated 77% of hiring managers immediately disqualify resumes because of grammatical mistakes or typos. So I think it's already telling a story about you, so it's really important to ensure that it's spot on. So cross-check the requirements with your CV, and one other thing. Yeah, so a bit of a checklist there, which we can share with you.
I would add something. Aside from just grammatical errors, try not to make the CV too complicated when it comes to design and stuff. Like a lot of graphs, a lot of like different formats. I would say keep it as simple as possible and easy to read.
Yeah, I would totally agree, actually. A fancy font and sort of lots of different formatting isn't necessarily what a hiring manager looking for. Times New Roman is fine as long as it's got the right content in there. So yeah. Okay, so let's move on to some of your other questions.
So are there any tips to best prepare my CV for recruiting software or ATS? Yes. So as I mentioned, so this recruiting software, obviously it's all automated, they reject or they accept based on what is in your CV. So I would say that it's quite important. The most important thing when you're submitting your CV into a recruiting software or ATS is to keep it simple as possible. That means, try to avoid putting text boxes, try to avoid having tables or photos or a lot of different colors or a lot of different graphics, or even, different fonts or different formats. Just avoid all those different things, because what it does is all this ATS system, they actually cannot read all these things, your text boxes, your tables, your graphics, and it cannot read all that. So that means that it will just eliminate all those information that you have put into your CV. And that means immediately it will go into a reject pile, because it just cannot capture all the relevant information that they can park into, or they can sort of record into their ATS system. So, when you're submitting resumes into all this, you just want to make sure that you want to eliminate all these obstacles. So just back to, Times New Roman, it's fine. Making sure that it's a clean resume with the right keywords. I think that's important, because what it does is it does capture all the SEO keywords. It fills in all the requirements and it fills in all the right keywords. That's how they pre-screen. If they get 1,000 applicants, that is essentially the ATS. What it does is actually eliminate all this that they think is not right. So including, all those graphics, as I mentioned. So that's the tip. That's the only tip I can think of to actually, when it comes to sending CV.
I think 100%. I think now it's more relevant than ever as well, because resources are limited in terms of recruitment teams. There's a high number of applications, and it's unfortunate, but there's not somebody sat there looking through every single CV each time. Sometimes it does take a search to narrow down to the right kind of candidates. And if you've not got the right words in there, or those words can't be read, then it's missing out on an opportunity.
And I think a lot of recruiters, or even talent acquisition people, they do rely on technology to do that first layer of screening, because it can get overwhelming with so many applicants. And as we all know, technology is great to automate things, but it's not great in making sure that it's 100% accurate when it comes to screening. So it's important that you have all the right keywords and your resume is as clean as possible, so that the tech can actually be in your favor instead of working against you.
Agreed.
Okay. How successful are speculative CVs? Are they a waste of time? Anybody wants to take this?
I would say on that, it depends on your time frame. So when you're applying for a job, there's a job to apply for. There's a vacancy, there's a need. With a speculative CV, you're speculating. So if you're wanting to make a connection and to put an iron in the fire, as you might say, to sort of create future opportunities, then I definitely think it's worth doing, and particularly if you're doing that on a relatively regular basis, then eventually those opportunities will come to fruition. However, if you're immediately available and you're looking for a job right now, you may find that it's the time frame is too long. But yeah, I definitely don't feel like it's a waste of time. I think particularly in a market like Singapore, when it is quite small, it's great to network. It's great to get sort of your to build your network out, and that's speculative CV is a great way of doing it.
Yeah, I think speculative CVs is more a proactive way to do things, as well as it's more of an opportunistic way. Because number one, even as recruiters, we don't get every single job from our clients. They don't brief us on any single job that they have. So it means that they could be hiring a lot of roles that we don't know of. And speculative CV is really for us to say, hey, we've got this person on our radar. Do you have anything for them? It may not be right now. They could say that, no, we don't have any role for this person. Or they could say that, wow, great CV, happy to chat, but we don't have anything for this person. Or they could say that actually we are planning for our headcount for the next 6 months, and this person could be something that we could be looking for. So it's very a bit up in the air, but it does create opportunities, and it does start conversation. And for some of our other clients as well, they also think that way, that if there's a great talent in the market, they would also like to know that there is someone in the market. And yeah, but it's all about opportunity, and it is speculative, so there's no 100% I guess success rate, but it can get somewhere. Yeah, that's what I would say about speculative CV.
I mean, we often see that if you're the perfect candidate for a potential role that the company is anticipating in the future, that actually a role can be created for you if they see the value in bringing you on board, even when there isn't a vacancy there immediately. So yeah, it can open a lot of doors for sure, but it's not quite as quick as the application process. Also, often could not be as quick as the application process. Have you anything to add, Prerna? Because we've got a couple of questions that have come in. So
I was just looking at those. I guess the only thing that I can add is that it is totally dependent on the sort of time that you have. So if you've got that time, if you can actually play around, then by all means, take the route of doing a speculative CV. But if you're on the market and you're looking for something ASAP, then this could maybe open doors or lead to a new connection. But as Rena and KJ said, it's not 100%. There are no guarantees. Yeah.
Rena gave some really awesome info on the previous question around ATS CRM systems. But there's another question that's come in to say, should we submit our resume in PDF or in Word to make sure that ATS or recruitment software can read the file? Do you want to answer that?
I think both are fine.
Yeah,
I think they're both fine, as long as, like I mentioned, there's no weird formatting, that you're not putting too much, you're just keeping it as clean as possible.
Yeah.
So ATS ATS systems can actually read both quite well.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. And then there's another question here. Is it true that we should limit the usage of technical jargons? I think it depends. Yeah, I mean, I think, sorry, they probably answer this better than me, but my initial response would be no, because going back to sort of SEO again, is if that jargon is important to the person who's reading the CV and the role that you do, like, include it in there for sure. Sorry, go ahead, Prerna.
No, that's fine. It's always good to know that, but I think that a lot of times, a lot of CVs can just read a long list of just jargons without any information on it. So I feel that as long as, put it on there if it is important, if it is actually something that you've got hands-on experience with, because another thing that I see with a lot of tech CVs is a mention of things that you've just touched upon, or you've just done it for like a week and it's still on there, but it's not really relevant. So I guess it just boils down to understanding what is relevant, what is it that you're looking for, and then deciding what needs to go on and what needs to probably not go on.
Yeah, I think sometimes we see tech CVs and like they can do everything, like,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
we're like, that's impossible. they can work on
Exactly.
any tech. So I think yeah, like what Prerna said, just put what is relevant and what the ones that you really have worked on and you know how to, I guess, use.
Yeah. Speaking of technical jargon, we just had a question from Jennifer that said, what are speculative CVs? We probably should have specified earlier, but there's a few different ways that you can apply for a job at a company. So one of them, and the more traditional way, would be applying for a job that's been advertised. Another way is for you to approach a company with your CV to say, hey, look, if you are recruiting, please consider my profile. There's obviously different sort of styles of approaches that you can take, but that's essentially a speculative CV.
Yeah, I think it's more like there's no specific job.
Yeah.
There's no specific opening, but you know that your profile, you've seen people with similar profile like you, that they hire people like you, and you feel that you are the right profile for them. So you approach them and say, hi, I'm not sure if you're hiring, but I would like for you to consider my profile in case, there's, yeah. So it's more on that there's no specific role, but you are approaching them on the basis that you hope that, yeah, they would consider you or something could open up or there could be a potential role.
Thanks, guys. There's another question that's come in here before we move on. Do companies, when hiring, examine purely based on achievements of the CV, or are other aspects of myself that I could include, other aspects of myself I could include that would make my CV stand out more? I think we've touched on that already a little bit, but I think doing your research to make it relevant, I would definitely say. So again, I mentioned before about the values. I mentioned that because that's something that's really important to 33 Talent. So we look to sort of see whether potential candidates that would work in our team are are displaying those values already. So so something like that would be a good way of researching. You might find it would depend on the company that you're applying to, but I'd say just make it relevant.
Yeah.
Anything to add there?
I think accomplishments are always important because it sort of, that's the difference between a great candidate versus a candidate who's doing the same job as you. And yeah, so I always, especially when it comes to sales, every sales job is the same. Your job is to bring in revenue, but what makes you different from the rest is, have you achieved your targets? Do you are you someone who can bring in a lot of revenue? So I think the accomplishments is quite an important part of yeah, because I think if you're an account manager in a PR agency, you are an account manager. The role is an account manager. Everybody knows what an account manager does, but what makes you stand out from the rest is what your achievements are as an account manager.
I totally agree. So obviously, as I mentioned before, relevant but specific would definitely be the other thing. And again, not assuming too much either. I mean, one of the conversations I often have with my candidates is, when people say, oh, I cover APAC, and I say, what country is that? And people say, APAC. It's actually really different. People might be covering different countries. So be specific about which markets are you actually covering. That might be something, again, going back to SEO, it might be something that's searched for. So be specific about that. How many accounts do you work on? What coverage did you get? What was the sort of you know, the increase in revenue that you created for that business, and you know, new business wins. Yeah, so specific about your achievements as well.
Yeah, I think the only thing that I can add is that especially for tech CVs, if there's a specific technology that you're interested in or you dabble with on the side, or if you've got any side project, then it's worth mentioning. Because you know, you might not be using it hands-on in your current role, but it's obviously something that you're passionate about, that you've been investing time in. So that kind of stuff is worth mentioning as well.
Okay, I think we've got a couple of sample CVs that we're going to look at from each of our specialisms. So we can talk a bit more on that. Please feel free to continue sending in your questions.
Okay. Okay, I can go first.
These are all fake profiles, by the way.
They're all fake.
They're all fake, but it's just a sample, yeah.
Yeah, Mary Lee does not exist.
I'm sure that Mary Lee exists, but maybe she's not a full stack developer.
Yeah, who's at Maybank and then was at Randstad. No, we've literally just made these up. But I think, as you can see on this one, it's important to have that skills column. So you can tell by looking at the CV that, you know, she's a front-end developer, she's worked with Angular, she's worked with React, you know, she's got some experience with Python. So it's worth mentioning that under your skills section for tech CVs. The other thing that stands out is the summary, where she said, you know, she's a software engineer, she's passionate about new technologies, new frameworks. So that's great as well. One of the things that you notice is that she's a career switcher. So she used to be a trader, but now she's a developer, and she's sort of managed to add in just enough that we need to know about that trader role, although she's looking to move into a software engineer position. So, you know, on the trader side, she's talked about what her role was, but she's also kind of, you know, talked about the analysis bit or the little bit of statistical stuff that she was managing in that role. So somewhere I mean, I guess there is some connection between the two things in terms of how you'd be approaching a problem, in terms of how do you think about things. I guess, you know, the logical thinking aspect that is needed for both of these positions. So there is a way to sort of join the dots if, for example, if you were a career switcher, or if you were just looking to make sure that, you know, you're looking at taking the next step in your career, whatever it is, there are ways to present a CV, especially a tech CV, in a way where someone reading it would have a very clear understanding of what you're looking for.
Okay, next.
Right. Sorry, I think there's a question on that one where someone's asked, I've heard some recruiters advise not to rate your skills, but just to list them. What are your thoughts? I think I can go first on this, but
I think that's more relevant to tech.
Yeah, I guess so as well. And I think it's up to you. If you're comfortable rating them, then by all means put a rating. And it just boils down to how confident you are about those skills. If you don't want to put a rating, then by all means don't, and just list them out. That's fine as well.
Yeah, but I think how critical you are of yourself as well.
Yeah.
No, I think from the tech perspective, if you are, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Prerna, but if you are, you know, applying for a role that really requires Python, for instance, and you're really good at Python, then it makes sense for you to grade yourself.
Absolutely.
That you're very good at it. Yeah.
So we'd say it's for you to sort of gauge what's the best way to rate yourself. Okay.
Okay. All right. Say hi to John Smith.
Hi, John.
Hey, John.
BD manager. I guess for John is what is good about his CV is he highlighted, you know, government sale and deployment. So he led pre-sale and supported the close negotiation of a 5-year government contract worth $900,000. So what I can see is that, number one, anything to do with government, especially Singapore, closing a deal with Singapore government, it's always a very lengthy and a very difficult process. So that gives me, the knowledge that, okay, this is someone who could close very difficult deals. That's number one. And obviously he also mentioned that, it's a long-term contract, it's a 5-year contract, and it's worth almost $1 million. So that's like, okay, it's quite a big, it's sizable deal. And it's something that, it's quite a long-term contract. So that's, aside from just his achievement, that gives me a lot on who he is and his network within government. So that's one. And then other achievements, he achieved 100%. So it's someone who, probably is very goal-centric, and someone who can hit his target, achieve 100% of Q2 lead generation opportunity qualification goals despite pandemic economic conditions. So again, someone who's very tenacious, someone who has grit, someone despite, everyone being in this pandemic could still perform. So that's something that, again, very, very positive, and gives me the sense that, okay, this is a very strong salesperson, regardless of, the circumstances. And then he also shows that what are the sales tools that he would use, Salesforce CRM, HubSpot, Copper. I would say that this isn't as important, but obviously if he's looking at an opportunity where the company is using similar tools, then of course it's very convenient. But typically CRM tools is quite similar, even though it's different sort, but it serves the same kind of purpose. So I would say that this would be more secondary. And then looking at career focus, leadership, people management, and development. So that shows that what sort of ambitions he has as a salesperson. And then high level negotiation, strategic partner management. The fact that, again, he sold something to government 5-year, it does show that he is a consultative salesperson, someone who could lead very complex sales process. And he's willing to relocate. Otherwise, it's great that he also speaks Chinese, intermediate Chinese, if you look at languages. So we just know that he could be useful if there's something that requires the Mandarin language or Chinese language. So I would say that, so this is just a snapshot of what a good, I guess, profile when it comes to sales would look like. Okay, to the next one.
Okay. So this one is more comms focused one. So I'll give my opinion on this. I think first thing I spot on here, which I'll point out because we've just had a question about this actually, which is should I specify how I would work in Singapore in terms of, do I require a work pass, or am I Singaporean, am I PR, am I working on DP? So this says SG citizen, which I think at a time like this, it's important to know. Not necessarily to say that if you do need a work pass, then you're not going to be considered for the role, but I think it's important to specify that, because not all companies can apply for EPs. They might not have the might not be able to allocate an EP, for instance. And if you are a Singapore citizen or if you're a PR, then that could also work in your benefit. So so that's good to mention that. We also talked earlier about adding your LinkedIn profile on there. So Lisa Liu has added her LinkedIn profile, so you can take a look on there and find out more about what she's like and what kind of company she's following and what kind of content she's sharing. Areas for improvement here, I would definitely say there's maybe a question mark around the sort of the dates that they've worked at this company. So it says that she's got 10 years of experience, but it looks like all of that experience is at Nestle. But when did this person progress from being a project executive to being a comms and strategy manager? If you've worked at the same company for multiple years in different roles, like, it's important to show how that progression has happened and when it's happened and how long it's taken you to move up the career ladder. So I would put the dates for each individual job for sure. Can't see any education on there, so I would say, yeah, definitely add that. It's sometimes a requirement. I also think it sort of adds a little bit of a bit more depth, gives a bit more sort of to the story in terms of what did you study, where did you study. Again, it's sort of like, you know, making the connections with the people that are reading your CV. The other thing I noticed on there, which I had already mentioned, was what markets do you cover? So is it a Singapore focused role, or are they focusing on APAC? If so, what regions are they working into? And I mean, I guess the other thing is languages. I mean, they may just speak English. But I would say if there are any, you know, if you do have any language skills, even if it may seem obvious, you know, I hear people saying, well, yeah, of course I speak Mandarin, but, you know, put it on there, because again, it's back to SEO. Like I keep preaching about that, but yeah, make sure it's on the CV. So yeah, that would be my feedback on that. So I think we've got a couple of answered that question. Someone's asking if Lisa's professional summary is too long. So let's go back and look at Lisa's professional summary.
Not to
I
me.
would say no, it's not too long.
It's okay.
Yeah, I think it's like, again, I think if the markets were in there, it would touch on really, really relevant points. And again, going back to SEO, I mean, you've got the job title in there, you've got the years of experience, you've got you know, digital marketing, social media. It's covering a lot. It's talking about specifics, so talking about clients. And then it sort of touches on some soft skills there as well, but you know, not too much. So
I think because Lisa has 10 years of experience,
yeah,
so she would have a lot more to say in her summary. But I also I mean, we have seen yeah, like this one, leadership, people management. This is more like a top line summary, whereas Lisa provided more specifics of, you know, and details on what she can do. I personally prefer this because I just feel that it's a snapshot of like a condensed version of what her 10 years of experience looks like.
Someone's just asking here, is it a strict rule that a CV has to be 1 page long only, since we need to mention our experience, achievements, skills, etc.? Is it okay to be 1.5 to 2 pages long only? Absolutely fine. These are just examples of sort of content, but we've
condensed it to make it into
yeah, it's quite an unusual format, but we've sort of put it in a landscape presentation, so it can be seen by you guys who are watching the screen at the moment. But yeah, definitely I think 1.5, 2 pages long is absolutely fine. If you can fit it all onto 1 page, then do, but I think anywhere between 1 and 2 totally works. Yeah, that would be my answer to that. Anything to add there?
No, I guess 1.5 to 2 is great. Like, as long as, you know, you feel you've highlighted everything that needs to be highlighted, it's good enough. But I would just say that, you know, anything over that number, just sort of take a look again, and I'm sure you'll find ways to make it a little more concise, because it's another question that says, can a resume run for more than 4 pages? So I guess, you know, that's probably a time to take a step back and just relook at everything that you've put out, and then try to make it a little more concise, because I'm sure
I would say that if you're someone who has 10 years of experience or 15 years of experience, obviously that's a lot of experience to squeeze into 2 pages. But what I would say is I would focus on the last 6 years, that I would elaborate a bit more on the last 6 years. The first 9 years, I'll keep it as short as possible, or even yeah, you will also see that some people don't even mention their first 2 jobs because they might be doing something completely different right now, that their first job is not that relevant anymore. So so if you're someone with 15 years of experience where you feel that there's a lot to say in your CV, I would say focus more on the achievements and what you've done in the last 6 years, and then the earlier years, yeah, you can just keep it very, very short.
The thing is, with a 4-page long CV, I think I'm sure it's all really relevant, and but again, going back to sort of in the moment is, there's so many applicants for just a few jobs, and if you have a 4-page long CV, the person who's reading it may not even get to the 3rd page or the 4th page. So whatever's on those pages, like, if it is important, then try and condense it down into those 2 pages so it does get read. Like if it's on the 3rd and 4th, it might just not get seen at all.
If you look at so one of the things like at INSEAD, for instance, their MBA program, they are always encouraged to do 1 to 1.5. That's their maximum. And these are people who are very, very senior. Only because I think there's a study said that after 2 pages, you sort of just lose interest in terms of reading a resume. That's why best practice is, I would say, 2 pages.
Okay. I'm just looking at some other questions that we have here that we haven't maybe covered. I think we've covered all of this here. Any suggestions on how to make a CV stand out for a fresh grad? We've just got a couple of minutes left. Any suggestions on that?
I would say if you are top of your class, that would be good.
Yeah.
To suggest that. Internship, and not just like, you've interned at Facebook or whatever, but during, obviously, projects that you worked on during the internship, what exactly did you work on? That would be good. And then side projects, let's say if you're the president of whatever club in your university, that is also relevant.
Yeah. So any like sort of co-curricular activities,
or even exchange, if you went on an
Exactly.
exchange program for a year, and again, what did you do there? So I think these are a few things. And also extracurricular. I mean, outside of school, outside of university, what else have you done? Maybe you created your own online business, or something. So anything like that would be very useful.
Cool. We have run out of time.
Okay.
So should we wrap up?
Yeah.
Sure.
If there are no more questions.
There's a few more questions that have come in. We've answered that one. Should we add volunteer roles, hobbies, other interests? Again, I think if it's relevant, then for sure, add those in there. Someone also asked, is it ethical to call out the client names? I think that it could be something that catches the eye of the employer. Again, like if it's relevant to the job that you're applying for, then if you can put them on there, and there's no sort of confidentiality agreement, then I would definitely recommend that.
Same thing.
Good. Okay.
Good. All right. Thanks everyone for joining.